Story time, Joe. Welcome, everyone. It's great to be here. We're in the middle of September, Joe, 2020. What's
time is going by. Time is going by so fast. I know that we have Hurricane Sally off to our west, but it's been raining every day. But I can't believe it's already September. I mean, it's almost October. Like, you almost got to pull out your Halloween stuff, Sid.
It's crazy, but at least, Joe, our entire varsity team is now in the pool. The Reed family pool at the Duff Tyler Aquatic Complex, St. Andrew's School, is being used at least for a couple hours a day. And I think people are seeing, we're being super safe. I just came back from another beach practice since March. I've been doing 6 days a week, minimum 3. And then the boys are out in Mission Bay. They run out there when practice finishes with varsities. But life's full, Joe, full. And we got a 5:30 a.m. practice, which reminds me of a few practices I went with the guest we have on tonight. There were probably more than one morning practice. He wasn't too thrilled with me. But this guy was a legendary coach. He was my mentor out of high school in 74. I chose North Carolina State. I was very excited and proud to swim for a man who coached there for 27 years, I believe, the one and only Don Easterling. There he is. Welcome, Coach.
Thank you. Glad to be here. Thank you for having me.
And Coach, everybody thinks of your great career at NC State, and we're going to get to that. We got a few of the boys coming on. But a lot of people, these days don't look back at the history now. In this show, we talk a lot about stories. And, we had Gary Hall on. We had John Kinsella on. We were talking to those guys about the 68 team. In 68, I know as a guy who went into 74 to swim for you, that 68 was a pretty special year because you had this young man. Not that one. You had which young man? Is he up? Joe, help me out. Is Doug with us? He's not on tonight. But he's going to be with us, hopefully. Doug Russell, Coach. Can you tell us a little bit about how you met Doug Russell and what happened in 1968 that was so historical for the aquatic world?
Okay. Before I touch on that, I want to mention one thing quickly. We gave the first scholarship ever to African-American in swimming while we were at Texas Arlington, Luther Walker, who's a minister now. I think one of the best coaching jobs he ever did was Ronnie Mills that year. He got the bronze medal in Mexico also. But the story about Doug that stands out to me is he lost the Spitz by just a foot or two several times over the years. We knew we had to change some things to make it go. We're getting ready to go to Long Beach for the trials, and the team was always playing tricks on me. They get the trainer to put the arm in a cast. They get the sheriff to look at me. They robbed the bank last night and all that stuff. So he comes to me the day before we leave and said, "Coach, I got 2 impacted wisdom teeth." I said, "Yeah, bring them over here and I'll knock them out. I know you're lying." I said, "No, I'm not." But sure enough, he had these wisdom teeth. So I called my dentist. It was a Sunday. And he meets us at the dentist's office. It's 103 outside. And he looks inside and says, "Well, I can pull them out or I can shoot it up with some juice." I said, "Doug, what do you want to do?" He looked at me and said, "You're the coach." There was a lot more into it than going them down the pool. I got on my knees and said, "Lord, have mercy." So we go outside, get ready to get in the car. And Doug throws some pills in the gutter. "What are you doing, Doug?" He said, "Well, those are pain pills." I said, "What?" He said, "You told me to get tough, didn't you? It's time to get tough." I knew then he was going to beat Spitz. I knew then.
Oh, Doug, I don't know if you heard that whole story, but that's pretty prophetic. You not taking the pain pills. He said, "Coach says he knew you were going to win the gold." What do you remember about swimming for Coach Easterling and as it was building into the 1968 trials and eventually Mexico City? It might be tough to get Doug. He looks a little frozen there, Joe. I know he's got some tough internet issues. Trevor Freeland, he's up for Coach Easterling.
Yeah.
Yeah, it may be tough getting him in and out. And what you can do, Doug, is probably just go audio, and you could probably cancel your camera and just do audio. That would probably be good.
Okay.
That'd be good, Coach. So tell me about the 68 then at Texas And you had this young African-American man, you had Mills, you had you guys were probably as good as a lot of the big name schools in those years, right?
We got second in the college division, Sid, and went to university division and got seventh. And that's where I met Mr. Casey, who was later my boss at NC State.
Willis Casey. Oh yeah, Willis Casey.
Oh my!
You met him at the University Division Championship, and he said, "What's this guy from University of Texas Arlington
getting all these medals?" That's what. Where you been getting all these medals? I said, "That's what it's about, isn't it?" I didn't know who he was really, but I later found out.
well, I found out. I met Mr. Casey first, and through Bob Matson, who swam for him, and Bob Matson, of course, coached me at Wilmington Aquatic Club. He also coached one of your great Olympic champions. As a matter of fact, you had a couple guys that stand out when I think of NC State. Well, 3 or 4. I mean, you can go on and on, but the 2 guys in my era, when I got out of NC State, we had Ralph Barrick, Dr. Ralph Barrick. We'll talk about him in a minute, and then Steve Gregg. My captains 2 years ahead of me, they both went to NC State. And so Steve, was gracious enough to tell us he'd join us tonight. And then welcome, Steve. Tell us where you're coming from. What's going on in your world?
Well, I'm in Charleston, South Carolina, enjoying finally moving to the South. We've been down here off and on for 20 years. And we love it. We love every bit of it. So, and it's good to see you, and it's really good to see Coach.
It's great to see Coach, and while he's here, I'm going to bring in your teammate, and some people would say, your better half. I think when you 2 guys traveled so much together in the 70s, whether it was the World Championships, Pan Am's, Olympic Games, and I know you're like 2 peas in a pod. Dan Harrigan, good to see you, Dan.
Wolfpack.
There you go.
There you go.
Now, Dan, you're coming from the probably from the Bethlehem area, somewhere up there. Where are you?
Bethlehem, Pennsylvania. You got it right, Sid.
God's country. Well, maybe one day the Lord will grace you and you can move back south because, Coach, there's nothing like living in the South. You're in Charlottesville, right, Coach?
Yes, I am. Yeah.
All right. Now, when you met these guys, certainly you met Steve first, and you had that little connection because, as we said, Bob Matson, who was our coach, and Steve and my coach, and we came out of Wilmington, Delaware, and that Matson was the very first NC State athlete to win a individual NCAA gold medal in any sport. And he ended up starting a team, and that's the whole reason I'm here today. But, Coach, tell me how you got hooked up with Steve Gregg, and how did you get him to come to NC State?
Well, he won the championships before he even came to school. And Peter Dalen and I were with the team over in Moscow at the time. And his wife would call and say what the results of the meet was the night before. The Nationals was going on at the same time in California, I believe. And Peter said, well, 200 butterflies won by a guy named Steve Gregg. I said, what? So I know him. He's coming to school next year. That's when I first really got involved with it more closely than with him.
So you were in Europe at the 1973 Long Course Nationals in Louisville, Kentucky, right, Steve? Walk us through that, because Steve grew up for 10 years swimming in the tiny little 25-yard chlorinated pool in Newcastle, Delaware. And Bob Matson, he graduated high school. He told us his last meet was at Philadelphia Aquatic Club. He said, hey, guys, I'm going out to swim for Flip Dar and get some long course in. And we said, what? The quarry's not good enough? And he said, no, I'm going to go out and get this. And he went out there in 73, Steve. Tell us the story. You go out there, you meet Flip. Coach isn't even there. You end up going 6, 8, 10 weeks later to nationals in Louisville. Fill us in.
Yeah, Sid, the days were so different back then that my parents didn't seem to have a problem as a 17-year-old putting me on a flight going from Philadelphia to LAX to be picked up at the airport by a guy I'd never met, to go swim with a guy I'd never met, and stay in an apartment by myself with 3 other guys that were 17. They didn't seem to mind back then of that kind of stuff. What helped me a great deal besides swimming long course was they had a swim meet down there. It used to be called the Los Angeles Invitational. It was changed to Mission Viejo Invitational. So I go down to the LA Invitational. Now my best time's 2:11, something like that from Hershey. We go to
You're
the
talking about long course 200-meter butterfly.
long course 200-meter butterfly. So we go to LA Invitational, and the Olympic bronze medalist from 72's there, fourth place from 72's there, fifth place from 72 is there. And so I end up in the finals of the 200 butterfly, going 2:06 that night, and suddenly got out and went, that long course training, that's good stuff. I ended up going to Louisville and going 2:04, and then a month later in World Championships went 2:03. So it sort of worked out great. And then got to school, and Coach Easterling was so gracious because I came in late. And what I do remember first was Coach Easterling said, "You got to go over and talk to the chancellor because the chancellor wants to meet you." He said, I was a 17-year-old kid. I weighed 155 pounds. There's no chancellor in the world that wants to meet me. He said, "No, take all your pictures, take the medal, take everything over there." And at that moment, I knew that NC State was a place that was going to take care of you, and really was proud that you were there and had come to swim with Coach Easterling at State. It was fantastic.
Oh, that's pretty cool. Pretty cool. And Coach Dan, what about you? How did you meet Coach Easterling? I know it had something to do with that great school of design, and you're one of the best architects in the East, I heard.
Yeah, that's what they say. But, I got recruited at Stanford, UCLA, USC, Illinois, Auburn, flew all these different places. What's that?
Waxahachie Barber College. You also signed a letter with them.
I don't know, but I knew when I went to college, I wanted to be an architect. So it came down to UCLA and NC State. And when I went to NC State, the thing that really sold me, besides Coach Easterling, was I met with two faculty members in the School of Design, and they said, "We will help you." And as opposed to Southern Cal, where the faculty members said, "Wait a minute, you want to swim here and study architecture? No, you can't do both." So that, it was an easy pick. And it was, I love the warm weather. The School of Design was great, and they had a good swim team. So.
Yeah, I know. I tell you, Coach, you tell me if this isn't true, but Dan and I got out of high school a year behind Steve. We were 1974, and in the spring of that year when we were all making our decisions, there was something special that happened on the basketball court up there, and David Thompson and the boys, took care of UCLA and won that national title. That had to do a big thing for the recruiting class, right, Coach?
Yes, it did. People always thought we were the ones that had the heel, We're not the ones with the heel, we're the ones with the wolf. Oh, okay. I made him understand that. I was making a speech out in the western part of the state. I put my towel on, the score got tied, took it off. How many overtimes was that when they finally beat UCLA? And they beat Marquette on Monday night for the championship. Remember that?
I do.
Yeah.
I do. Oh, yeah.
I remember.
I think it did. I remember Kenny Carr came in from DeMatha High School to play basketball. One of the best basketball players in the nation. He was in our class. Yeah. And then, it seemed like in every sport we had John Sadry in tennis come in that year, right? He was one of the very best ever in NCAA tennis.
All right.
Remember when he was playing McEnroe right in front of Tucker?
Yeah.
Yeah. We had some big time sports. Now, Coach, tell us a story that most people wouldn't really know about Steve or Dan or some of the things that happened to those teams when you were building up from, you won, I don't know how many different ACC titles in a row. I remember one time going over, I think it was in Clemson maybe, where you said, we got to win every single event. That was a team goal. We had to double. So it was like we had to win every event, set a record. But those years when you had these guys and you're building, I know that it was a special time in our lives. How was it for you, Coach?
Well, it was very special. Coming from a little bitty town in Arkansas and a small school in Texas, but it was at the University of Virginia in '74 when we won every event. Well, I think we won. I think it was 12 in a row, and then I got that bad cancer, and I was in Duke. And 2 blocks away, we lost to Carolina by 7 points. then came back and won the next two, or we would have had 15. But these two guys were the reason everything got better. I mean, along with that, we needed a breaststroker. And I was making a talk over in England, a clinic or something. This guy said, I got a bloke who'll do his quite good. You got the game over. And I said, what's his name? He said, Duncan Goodhue. Well, I recruited Duncan by telephone. He popped into my office and he had no hair. I said, where in the hell is your hair? He went back to the dormitory and came back with this huge blonde wig. Well, he was the breaststroker on that team. And of course, Dan was ill in the 76th game because of what happened with the hepatitis in Mexico. I think, Steve, we would have been better than 7th. We might have been 5th place because he would have scored extra points. The relay would have scored higher as well, you know. But Duncan was the breaststroker on that. Dan was the backstroker. You were the flyer, and Ummerstock was the anchor. I could not decide whether to go him on the fly, Eddie on the anchor, or you on the fly, him on the anchor. I said, oh, it's pretty simple. You're the flyer. Is the freestyler. So,
well, you got good memory, Coach.
Holding everybody off to the last, 25 yards. Everybody ran us down at the end.
That was up in Rhode Island, right?
Pardon?
As a Brown.
Brown University.
Brown University.
Yeah.
So Sid, I remember hearing this story. We put Umby on the end of the relay, and Umby was a freshman, and we knew we were going to be really good going into the anchor leg. And what I remember hearing the story, and I think Dan probably was there, was Coach Easterling said to Dan, when Gregg finishes, if Umdenstock doesn't go in, push him in. Is that true, Coach?
Yeah, he was. I couldn't decide where I was going to put him, so I found him over behind the diving tower, picking his nose. I said, Umby, I want to anchor you. He wet himself right there. So he was pretty scared, but he came through okay. He was just against a lot of good sprinters around the world at that time, of course.
Oh, yeah, and he had just rolled out of high school in Charlottesville, Virginia. I know he and James Kegley were good friends. I knew him from some Mid-Atlantic competitions, and he was he was green behind the ears, but he was willing. I'll tell you what, a gentle giant to this day, one of the great supporters of NC State.
He still lives there.
He's a starter for many years, right?
Yeah, he was, yes. Still lives there. He does a great job. He met this lady in his first class who was older than him, and he took her out for lunch, and they married and been together ever since.
Great family. They've had a wonderful time. I would like to think that all of us learned a lot from you, Coach. But did you learn anything from any of your students through the years, like anything that still sticks with you?
Oh, yes. And every coach will say this. I wish I knew then what I knew now what I knew then. I coach a master's class now, and everything is technique. And back in those days, I didn't do enough technique because I didn't know enough technique. A lot of coaches didn't. We did too many yards, too many miles, and not enough how to do the little things to make things work better. And now I know that. I wish I'd known it then. No, a lot of coaches don't coach that because they don't know what to do. All they know is mileage. And
well, how about talking about killing hogs, Coach?
Well, that was an activity where we sprinted the whole time. I remember
that was funny.
We swam Southern Methodist, and the day before, I said, I got to get in ready because they're a great team. So we sprinted for an hour and a half. The next day was so slow. The coach said, "What did you do yesterday?" I said, "An hour and a half of sprinting." He said, "Coach, you got to learn some more about this coaching business." Well, thank you. Appreciate it very much.
You know, Coach, it was a different time because when Mark Schubert was building up, you had guys like Rick Wines come in, and he's like, "Oh, this is nothing. We go 100 100s, or we do this, or we do that." And then he'd come in and challenge you, say, "All right, you pissant. You think Mission Viejo's got distance? Here we go." And I remember you laying out a few sets on us. It was just pretty big.
Yeah, I spent a lot of time all night long writing workouts and tearing them up, starting over again. That was at that time that I began to write workouts for specific people by stroke. Breaststrokers, IMers, sprinters, distance people. That was in that era. I'm beginning to do that a little bit more wisely, I think.
Well, I remember there was 1 or 2 days a week where over in those first couple lanes, and of course this was before we really had females, maybe Patty Simpson every now and then, and Allison Grant because she was special, you'd have down at the far end. But lanes 1 and 2 were pretty much like the distance area. And it was Dan and Steve and me, and sometimes, always Eddie Houchin and Ted Morlock. And I remember Morlock, I was like, who's this guy? What's he? And I think he impressed me through his work ethic and the way he came from really just 100 flyer at a small high school program in Philly to be an NCAA All-American top 6 in a 200 fly his senior year is unbelievable.
Yeah.
And what did it take, Coach, to coach a guy like that? You got the thoroughbreds, you got the Olympians, but to bring in a guy with virtually no big national or international experience, how do you get Morlock to swim so fast?
I'll never forget, we're going away to Tennessee to swim, and he knocked on the window. I rolled the car down, and he said, "I'm named Teddy Morlock. I want to swim for you." "What do you say?" He said, "The 100 butterfly, 52.8. I said, "What about the 200? He said, "There's a 200? And he came there and he told Steve, "Before I finish, I'm going to beat you." And he tried and tried and tried. I don't know if did he beat you one time in Cleveland, Coach, or not? Steve, I can't remember. You ever catch you or not?
Well, I'm sure he did, because everybody does at some point. But my career at NC State wouldn't have been nearly as good without Ted.
Oh, what a man he was.
Ted was that guy that was going to be there every day.
Yes.
If you couldn't outperform Ted, you weren't going to be able to do anything else.
I like Becky. I like Becky.
He couldn't swim a decent 500. He couldn't swim a 100 fly. He could swim a 200 fly. He was an amazing young man. To this day, I use his name a lot with people saying, "You ought to be a Teddy Morlock if you want to be good someday,"
And he's pretty smart, Coach. He married Becky. That took some,
That's right.
He was the manager. Yeah.
Well, God bless them both. They did a lot for us, and I know that Becky at least is watching, and they have. You have a lot of your old friends here. Saying hello to you, Coach. I saw Jimmy Barkman and Scott Woodburn. He said he remembers the St. Lawrence University camp. You remember Scott Woodburn?
He was South Carolina and beat us by 1 point. But I just think about Teddy Morlock all the time. He's just an amazing young man. He's been so successful, as all of y'all have as well. I mean, your lives have been so great too, as well as what you did athletically. I commend you for that, and I express my thanks to you for what you've done with your lives, all of you. I'm so proud of you.
Well, Coach, I know I was a stubborn SOB, learned a few tough lessons from you, and I share them with my kids. I'm still coaching today, and there's things I've learned that I definitely share. And I think both these guys, and Dan, did you learn anything from Coach?
I loved his every workout at night. He gave a talk with his Southern drawl and joking around, and he didn't. I mean, he was trying to inspire us, and it worked sometimes. But I like that rest period, so I could think about getting serious about my workout. So, and he didn't push me hard because I hated running. I didn't like to run before workout, so I was always the last one. I just thought running was not for swimmers, but we ran to you guys ran to the stadium and down to the Capitol, didn't you?
And back. Yeah.
And back. It's like, I can't do that. So what I would do is stay at my architecture studio till 5:30 so I wouldn't have to do any of that, So
I remember Dan was a great kicker, and he told me because he had to give something to his sister, some bone marrow. Am I correct, Dan? Is that what it was?
Well, I had bone tumors when I was a young kid. Yes.
And part of your rehabilitation was kicking. Well, you got since I never saw anybody kick like you did. We had 2,100 kick on like 2 minutes. Coach, I won't do them on 115.
Oh, I came back. I came back from to practice or to school one fall, and I asked that you lower the interval rate.
Yeah.
And because in meters, as a kid, I used to do 100 meters kick on 2 minutes. Then Jokums did it on 145, and Steve knows that. But then in yards, it was really about kicking and working your legs.
All those turns, in and out of the turns.
It made a big
that was
difference.
Eddie Houchin's game, man. I remember him kicking under a
Ooh.
minute with a kick. I never saw anybody kick under a
Yeah.
minute with a kickboard.
He was a good kicker. He was.
He also could kick a 58-500 fly in 1967 yards.
Doug did?
That's hell of a job.
That
Wow.
guy that swam against you, Steve, what was his name? Was such a great kicker? Oh,
Gregg Jagenberg.
Yeah.
he could kick, couldn't he?
Yeah. Now he's taking back, Coach.
The big thing about it is timing, and every stroke it comes from the legs. I don't think American swimmers coaches do enough kicking. And I'm talking about tough kicking on intervals, sets
Yep.
that are demanding, on time.
Yep.
And
That changed me especially for distance swimming. I got a lot better when I was kicking a lot harder. And
man, if you
building my
hadn't
legs.
been sick that year, and I remember you came back from Mexico and we got ready to go. When you went back to South Bend to beat Mama and the hospitalization doctor there, and you came back and the doctor was with me when you were getting the water warming up. And I said, well, what if I don't do enough work with you? He said, I got to be careful. So he won't make the Olympic team. I said, well, doctor, what if I do too much? He said, you'll kill him. I said, what? Okay.
You're right. You're right. That's what he said. In fact, I remember the first time I started, what came to practice, I did 2 laps.
Yeah.
The next day I did 4 laps.
Yeah, we built you up. But Steve,
And then the doctor would check my bilirubin and albumin levels, whatever that was.
knowing what you were, if you hadn't been caught that year with that sickness, how do you think you would have done in Brown?
At Brown?
Yeah,
Well, at Brown, if you remember, I won the consols,
yeah,
and I actually was happy with that because I didn't swim in any meets.
no,
But you wanted me to swim at NCAAs because we had a really good team that year, between the relay. And I was actually, and it was a good thing you made me do it because I could have just skipped that year. But it was good that you made me do it because that got me excited for going to the Olympic trials.
yeah.
But do you remember, Steve, how yellow Dan was? He was like,
Man.
he was like the color yellow. When we went to see, I was so worried. When we went into that hospital room, we weren't allowed into the room. We had to stay outside.
Yeah.
Dan's doing his little puppet act, and he got out a banana, carved it into his favorite figure. He did all that for us. Like, he was putting on a show there, Coach, in the hospital
I was
room.
bored. I had to do something.
Yeah.
I don't know that we realized how serious that was.
Well, nobody did. Everybody thought it was a flu. And about 3 days later, the test came back and found I had hepatitis A. And anybody that came into the room from the team, they all had to get vaccinated.
Yeah, that's right.
So that was weird. Everybody was mad at me and nobody visited anymore.
Sid, if I may, one quick story about these two guys. That
Please.
year, when they were going to Mexico for the games and all that, Mr. Casey said, Coach, they hadn't got to take 12 hours, which is required minimum 12 hours. So since they're doing that, I said, Willis, are you sure? He said, yeah, just 6, 8 hours. I don't want to get overloaded. I said, oh, okay, if you say so. Well, we had the ACC championships and Chapel Hill, and some lady from newspaper were interviewing Steve. He said, yeah, we had a lot more rest this year. We didn't have to take 6 hours. And Willis called me off next morning and said, you're fired. I said, again? He said, yeah. I said, Casey, you told me I did not do that. I said, yes, you told me. You think I did not. He picked up the phone. He called the auditor. He said, I want to enroll these people. I want Stan Harrigan, Steve Gregg enrolled, and 6 more. I don't care what, but get them in there. I got it? You got it? Okay, thank you. Get out of here. Oh, that would scare the daylights out of me.
Yeah, I was taking 2 classes. That's right.
Yeah.
They were independent classes. That's right.
I would never have done that if you hadn't told me to. No way.
You had it worked out pretty well. You knew that classes to take. Steve was great for advice, Coach.
Yeah.
It was tough going in as a roommate because I was supposed to room with Dan, and then the last minute you said, "Oh no, there's this other guy coming in from South Bend. Dan wants a room with you. Can room with Steve." And I'm like, "But he's already a sophomore, and he has a girlfriend, and I'm a freshman. I want to come in and meet the freshmen." No, it'll be good. But it worked out good for a couple years. And then Dan took over. So I said, Dan, it's your turn. You live with Steve.
Yeah, that lasted 1 year. All 5 years in college, I had a different roommate every year.
Is that right?
Yes.
Wow.
Hey, Sid, I want to say something before I forget about Coach Easterling, because Coach Easterling used to talk about two things all the time. The first was Red Legend Pride. And what he talked about with Red Legend Pride was, you're here today because the people who came before you. And he created a sense of community as NC State guys. And when we still get together and alumni weekends and those kinds of things, there are guys that swam for Willis, that didn't swim for Coach, that are still part of the Red Legend Pride.
Right.
And I think that was brilliant and something that I'm glad to see that they're holding on to.
Well, I'm glad
Coach Easterling talked about, which I
we had it in 6-foot letters all the way across the end of the pool. When Braden came in, it gotten pretty bad. And if we got some time, Sid, I want to tell the dumbest thing I ever did.
Oh, we got time, Coach. Let's let Steve finish his story.
One other thing that Coach Easterling used to talk about that I hope you have as part of your coaching was he used to say all the time, you got to be ready to swim. And we would go to dual meets and we'd be tired and he'd drag us someplace. We swam Clemson once, worked out for an hour and a half before the swim meet. Well, they're not good. We're just going to get on a look. It's like, no, we'll warm up. And no, we went an hour and a half hard. But it didn't matter because once you showed up at a race, if you didn't get your head right and you weren't ready to swim, you couldn't do anything. And he talked about that all the time, about being ready to swim.
Be ready.
I think it works in business. If you're not ready for meetings, if you're not ready for presentations, it's the same. It's brilliant.
Right.
And he talked about it all the time.
Life's that way too, and you have to be ready.
So, Coach, what was it, this dumb thing that you did? Tell us a story.
Well, it was remember we hung up a banner every year when we won it. Little red and white banner. I found one the other day when we moved. Every year a new one. Well, in 1979 we won it and I hung it up, but I ordered one for 1980 the same time. And I hung it up there and I covered it up with an Olympic flag, the same size. And nobody knew it but my manager and I. He didn't dare tell anybody. Well, the conference championships are at our place. The last night we're 16 points down, and I have the flag brought in, that ladder brought in, and climbed over, and I jerked the Olympic flag down. It says, Champions Men 1980. And the place booed us. Oh, man. And we went, I forget, we went 1-2 in the mile, 1-2 in the back, 1, 2, 3, 4 in the 100 free. It was over. I was scared to death. When did you do this for, you idiot? But motivation is a great thing. To do something like that was stupid, though.
Well, Coach, I know you motivated us in a lot of different ways. I mean, magic tricks here or telling us, no, you're all done. Oh, no, you're going to do one more.
Remember the things on the back of your shirt? You remember those things?
Yes. There were quite a few of them, some great ones. I follow that tradition.
Yeah.
But
can I ask, I'm trying to remember, what town were you from in Arkansas, Coach?
Actually, Pine Bluff.
No, what did you used to
That's
tell
not
us?
what he said. That's not what he said.
That's not what you told us.
Resume Speed.
Resume Speed, Arkansas.
Yeah,
that's right.
Which was a town, actually, but not where I lived and grew. I grew up in Pine Bluff. It was not a whole lot better than Resume Speed. They have on the license plate in Arkansas, land of opportunity. You get out while you have the opportunity. You don't starve to death.
yeah, Coach,
Oh,
I have one of my favorite, if not my very favorite, assistant coach ever chiming in, Barbara Huey. She said, I will always remember Coach working with David Fox in the early 90s, trying to work hand and foot speed during dryland training by blowing bubbles at him and having him touch each one. Classic creativity. Do you remember that day, Coach?
Yes, I did. We had a video of that, plus some other things. We had Chucky Cox, who was the great black sprinter for us, is on the same 192
Aquatic Club Sea Tigers.
A lot of things, grabbing the bubbles, bouncing balls, grabbing them, handstands, toe lift, straight line, push off, that sort of thing. We had whole video of things we did those 2 or 3 years with him. Yeah.
I remember your dryland program. There was a pamphlet. It was something about exercise, and the acronym was SEX, sex. But
endurance, flexibility. Yeah.
Strength, endurance, and flexibility.
Yeah, we had to get some sex in your workout. Boy, that was in a magazine article. Let me tell you what, I got a lot of notes from the Baptist Church about that one. I said, well, read the first paragraph. Strength, endurance, flexibility. 3 things that are so important. You know what? To this day, I still say one of the biggest problems with our sport is lack of flexibility. I don't think people stretch enough. I mean, really stretch enough, you know. And I see even more now with master people.
Now, I see Ron Turner said hello. He remembers a few. Now, Allison, you know, when you first brought the girls in, Coach, my recollection, and Steve and Dan, you guys were there, because Steve, you were even the year before us. But that first year we were there, it was like, you know, it was great. And not occasionally Patty Simpson would be down at the far end, but it was like a boys' club. And then it changed a lot when all of a sudden we became a team.
Title IX, yeah. But before
you had Allison Grant too.
Allison and Jane Holiday Houchin. You know,
yeah.
Jane was on 3 different 4x50 free relay American records. She was on 4 different ones with the people different every year.
And that's pretty big. But her biggest claim to fame is that she captured Eddie Houchin.
Yeah, she married Eddie.
And they're happily ever after. They're still married.
You bet. And of course, they had a medal in 12. They had a son get a medal in 12 over there with Duncan, who, by the way, was knighted after he won the gold. You know, and if those that were there for the Olympics in 12 in London, he was the greeter with the top hat and all that, visiting everybody that came in, who remembered him from when he was in state, of course.
And there's Mark Elliott checking in. You even got your competition. Mike Currington from Alabama said, please tell Coach hello.
Oh, wow. Goodness gracious.
Yeah.
You remember those great Alabama dual meets, Coach?
Oh, gosh. We can't wait. We beat Auburn the night before. And Dan
I remember that.
Had temperature. And he said, I'm going to swim anyhow. And he swam and beat the backstroker. And we ended up beating Auburn, who had beaten Tennessee and who had not lost a dual meeting since the turn of the century. And so we go into Alabama the next day. They're waiting on us. But we beat Auburn. They're hated rivals. We go in the door and sit down, and all of a sudden they open the door, and it was 18 degrees outside.
Yep.
50 football players standing there weighing 400 pounds each, and we ain't shutting the door, Jack. We all looked around. We were 29-7. We were behind 29-7 before I could turn around good. Oh, man. He was waiting. Well, he came to us the next year. I don't know if you remember that or not. We had the football team sitting behind us with water guns. And we got them all the way down the relay and finally won that one. So it was great.
Steve, what do you remember?
Hey, Coach, I told that story to a bunch of folks. I went to NCAA's a couple of years ago, maybe the last 5, and we were all having lunch. And there are 5 other universities that told that same story about Gambrell and the door being open in the football teams.
Wow.
Apparently, it was something he did to everybody.
Yeah.
And Coach, here's what I do remember about that trip. Okay, it was cold, and we were in those vans, and we drove to Clemson, and we swam. We did a workout because I know I saw Jimmy Shalistead had just graduated. He was living down there, and he visited with us. And then we got up and we drove to Auburn. We got there, we checked in, we did it, and then we beat them. And it was a late night meet, like 7 o'clock start. We finished at 9. We got back to the hotel so late, but we're all jacked up. We could hardly sleep. And in the morning, we had to get up real early because we had a noon or 1 o'clock start with Alabama. And that's when they just started that fax taper and shave, like you could pass off results. And everybody in Alabama had known the results. We had beaten Auburn, and we were all ranked like 4, 5, and 6 in the nation, right? And you're right. One of them had beaten Tennessee, and it was like, oh, NC State's coming. But when we got on the freeway, Coach, do you remember going the wrong way?
Yeah,
an hour and a half.
Many times. I got lost going home, Sid. But you know about these bands, they had no lining in them there. And everybody had these nice warm parkas. And I said, Mr. Casey, we're freezing to death. It's not healthy. We really need something to keep us warm. I want to get some of those parkas. He said, you need something to keep warm? He said, how about blankets? I said, blankets? Oh. He took the phone. He said, Mr. Poole, who was the manager of the equipment, said, how many, you got any of those blankets? Well, how many you need? I said, 36. 36, you know, pick them up. They were Army blankets. We wore those damn Army blankets to keep warm, just to make me mad. Oh, that was terrible.
Yeah, those were the old tough days. I just saw Susan Crumroy put a note up, Coach. She said, remember when we first unveiled the record board, you said the first person to change the board could win a steak dinner for two, and Ralph Barrick won that dinner. You remember that?
I don't remember that.
But you do remember Dr. Ralph Barrick.
I remember this. At the JCCs were at Duke, and I couldn't decide who to put on the 800 relay. And Mr. Casey called me and said, how are we doing? I said, so. He said, if Barrick wins the 400 IM tonight, put him in the middle of the 800 relay. I said, he goes, he ain't been under 151 with a running start and wearing fins. He said, no, he'll do it. Watch him. So he won the IM, and I said, you know, seriously, I put him number 2. He went 149. You know, that was nothing great, but that was big time for him. We won the relay. Oh, Ralph Barrick.
Dan, you remember that 800 free relay a few times, right?
Yeah, a few times. You bet.
I remember some good ones, Steve, when we had like NCAAs against. I remember once we were up against Jokum's boys with Jagenberg and Shaw and that crew. They were all Long Beach State, right?
Yeah.
And we had some, and you had to be top 6 to make it in the finals, and you had to do that 200 free individually on the relay in the morning, and then twice more if you were good. You had to do it 4 times that day.
That was tough, right? That was tough.
Yeah.
You know, speaking along those lines, I never forget when we were swimming. I forget who it was now, but we went out to the meet to go somewhere, and somebody couldn't unlock the doors. We couldn't get in. You remember where that was? I can't remember where we had stood out in the cold with these blankets around us trying to get in the pool.
In the old pool at Maryland.
I think they trip to Maryland, Coach. We always seem to hang up there in Maryland. We'd take a couple days just to go. Tommy Bryan said hello. He said you look good.
I messed up. We went to the Easterns that year up in Dartmouth. That's when the guy had the toboggan and broke his leg. The sprinter who was in the 3rd and the 5th of the year before.
Chuck Rayburn.
Yeah, the kid from Sweetwater, Texas, was his name.
Chuck Rayburn.
Chuck Rayburn, yeah. And he after the meet was over with, he had a bunch of guys from Texas that he knew at Dartmouth, but on this toboggan in the middle of the midnight on the golf course, and he had a compound fractured his leg. Oh,
yep, I remember that.
I had to call. Yeah. I called Frank Whedon, who passed away recently. And I said, Frank, I told him what happened. He said, what the hell's a toboggan? I told him. He said, you tell Mr. Casey tomorrow, let me get out of town before you do, because he's going to fire you again. So I called Casey. I told him. He said, what's a toboggan? I told him. What time you playing it in? 2:50. In my office at 2:30. I went in, he mellowed down. Everything was fine. I'm sorry how you lost your guy and all that. How would you won the meet? I said, I would have put Tom Bryan in the 500 instead of the 50. We would have won the thing. Sure nothing would happen.
Yeah,
they lost about 4 or 5 points. Yeah.
Tom could do a good 500. He always thought he was a 50 guy.
Yeah.
He was wrong.
Yeah.
Hey, Coach, you remember we were getting on a plane to go somewhere. Maybe it was Dartmouth something, but and my alarm didn't go off, and you guys were at the airport, and you had all driven in the van to the airport, and someone said, is Harrigan in that van? Oh yeah, he's in the van. You got to the airport, I wasn't there. And you called my suite, and you made them hold the plane for me. Do you remember that?
Yeah, I mean,
It was going to be Dartmouth.
I can't believe they held the plane for me. That was
that was great. Yeah.
He was persuasive.
Yeah.
Well, You know, Coach, it's so good to be catching up. And NC State, you know, we love it. Steve brought up a very good point about the legacy that we inherited, and you look at what's gone on since then, and the coaches since you retired.
Look what Brayton's done. Oh my goodness.
Certainly, you know, I mean, David Fox won a title, and Cullen Jones won a title, and Brooks Teal was swimming in Tarboro when I grew up swimming in Kinston. And, you know, I know that there's been a lot. Scott Hammond, of course, you know, great motivator for me as a teammate. But when Braden Holloway got there, Coach, from your point of view, your perspective, what changed? What did Braden bring to the table?
I went to a meeting with all the alumni of his first year there, and he made a talk and looked in his eyes. I said, "Oh, I see something here I haven't seen in a long time." So I said, "Let me speak." Yes, sir. This guy's got it. Hang with him. He's going to get us there. And what has he done? Whoo-wee. You know, Mark Bernardino, who used to be here in Virginia, is the distance coach at NC State now. What goes around, you know. He told me the other day they think in 2 or 3 years they make it win it all. He really believes that. Who they've got coming in and all, you know. But this program, man, it's very good. He used to be the assistant coach with Brayton. And now, of course, Louisville, they got no budget there. Just go out and win. You got no budget. Now Carolina's finally got a good coach. So it's getting to be a tough league. It really is.
That ACC, yeah. I mean, yeah, you look at the girls Virginia has coming, and they could win the girls and get Wolfpack to win the boys.
They can win the girls. You're right. It's amazing.
I know. You know, I've seen Richard Hermes, a few of our esteemed alums. There's a gentleman, Coach, we talked about briefly who's done a lot for the Alumni Association. And I'm going to bring him in here quickly to say hello. Dr. Jeff Michelby, welcome tonight.
Jeff, how are you? How are you, buddy?
Doing great, Coach. Thank you.
All right, Jeff, if we can speak up just a little, give us a quick Coach Easterling story, something that would it's got to be nice to share this evening.
Well, the one story that I like to tell is, can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
I was always in lane 7 or 8, and I was so thankful that Hermes and Barrick and Corliss were in lane 1 to take the wrath of Coach's workout vigor. And I was in utter amazement at what those guys would do in the workout. And I was just thankful when I was by the divers and not by Hermes and Barrick. So
Jeff,
yeah. Well,
yeah, Coach, I don't know if you could hear it, man. On my end, I couldn't quite get it, but I want to go ahead, Coach.
Yeah.
Yeah. I do. You remember a story about Jeff Michelby?
Yeah, I do. We were at Virginia and we'd won every event for the first night and every event the second night, and I didn't know it. And Jeff came to me and said, "Coach, give me some money to run down to the store, get some crazy things to keep him loose tomorrow." I said, "Okay." Why? He said, "If we're going to every event." I said, "What?" I didn't realize it. And of course, that same year, he was the captain. And as we pulled up to go the first day on a Wednesday, he had everybody wait, and they came walking in the pool with these hats on saying, "Piss ain't power," across the front of the hats. And Jimmy had him sitting down. He clapped his hand all across the right leg. He clapped his hand all across the left leg. Came out time to warm up. He got in and pulled the ropes out. And they played Ring Around the Rosie. So after the second night, we won everything. Jeff said, "Give me some money to do some stuff." We did. And of course, we came back and won. But the next morning, Hermes knocks on my door and said, "I think I'm going to be sick." And he vomited in front of my feet there. And he was the leader the breaststroker. Well, you may remember Chris Mapes came out of, I believe, out of lane 8 and won the thing to keep it going for us. So we won every event. But Jeff kept us going with keeping everybody loose because of it. And I got ready to go and hit the roster, and Mr. Casey said, "He can't score. You're not going to take him." I said, "I'm going to take him because he's the best leader I've got right now. I'll pay his way." And I did. And it worked out fine because he was a great, great leader. Always has been a great Wolfpacker. Great story.
Yeah, Dr. Michelby, thanks for being a major part of the Wolfpack legacy.
There's not a fighter like him in the world.
And coach, he's still setting national records in his 60s.
Yeah, I know.
Unbelievable. 50 back. How fast, Jeff? 50 back in the last 5 years.
Under 27.
What do you say, Steve? 22?
Under 27.
Under 27, yeah.
That's pretty good. Pretty good.
Someone asked me when I tell the story about decorating Coach Comfort's office. I don't know if y'all know that story or not, but after I had colon cancer, it was pretty bad. And, I had a pouch on the outside and finally had one on the inside. I can't tell this story. It's just not right. Never mind. I'll tell y'all later. I don't think
I remember it.
it'd be over the news. Anyway, I decorated his office in a very terrible way. And he went in there later and he came back. They just had this new pool built, a brand new office and everything, I fixed it real good for him. Everything in there was brown. Everything. And the assistant coach, who was later the head coach, said, "Man, have you been in that room, man? You don't go in there right now." Oh, man, I hated that guy.
Well,
Coach, we changed cards right before each event. People, what did you say to him? I called him every name I could think of every time I handed him a card. I didn't like him. And of course, grew right away. He didn't like me either. So,
well, I remember when we were swimming, it was Pat Erie was the coach over there, and then Jim Wood. God rest his soul. He was a good friend of mine. But Steve, I do appreciate Dr. Michael B. you coming in. Jeff, I'm not getting your audio. I don't know if there's something you can do. I'm going to pull you out for a minute, but we're getting ready to sign off here in the next 10 minutes or so. But if Joe can get you in, if you had something else you want to say, Steve.
I was going to tell you one of the first things that Michael B. did when I was a freshman. So he's an upperclassman. We went to a swim meet and he got a blackboard up and he said, "People are going to ask you where you're from, and I'm going to explain it to you. You're from North, N-O-F-F, Car, C-A-R, new word O, last word Lima. So if anybody asks you where you're from North Carolina State." I remember sitting there, a kid from Wilmington going, "What in the heck have I gotten myself into?"
That's great. Remember those old blocks at the other end that were all straight across the top? And they were slicker than deer guts all the time. Remember the box at the port when y'all came? Oh, terrible, terrible.
Well, I remember the first time I saw NC State, and Coach, speaking of guys who've passed that had great swims there, well, Ed Barsh was one of my assistants here for years, and he retired. He recently passed, but he won the 1963 200 backstroke swimming for Michigan in that pool at NC State
that was they built the pool for the national championships there. Yeah,
and we had incredible meets there in that horseshoe. My first time coming was when Bob Matson and Steve, you might remember some of these trips. Bob used to take us because we were such a strong senior team in high school. We would swim freshman teams because they were not allowed yet to compete. Freshmen they had only they had a freshman team. Like we would swim Navy plebes, we'd swim NC State freshmen because until 72 or 3 freshmen were not allowed to compete in the NCAAs, right?
The varsity
on a varsity team. I remember Tommy Burleson when he came to school had to play on the freshman.
Freshman got to compete in 68. And that was the year that we went to the Nationals and got second in the college division, losing to Gamble from Long Beach State. And we had the thing won, but my diver hit his head on him at 1.5 and so it chopped his head off. He was ahead by 20 points. He lost that, and we lost the meet by less than 10 points. And then we came on down 2 weeks later to Dartmouth, to the big one. That's again where I met Mr. Casey. It was 68 the freshman became eligible.
Well, Coach, before we sign off, tell us a Willis Casey story. What's so special about Willis Casey? Those of us on this call know, but
there are just so many of them. I remember one time he said, "Come with me in the office. I'm going to fire Lou Holtz. I'll need a witness." So he did. And I don't know how many times he fired me and everybody else too. It just got to be a regular thing. But I remember one time he said, "You can't even beat Carolina." I said, "I beat her more than you did." And he said, okay, if you fussed at him and argued with him, he liked you, you know. But he made me so mad one time. I had tears in my eyes. I went in the men's room to go to the bathroom. He came in beside me. Right? He said, "Hey, Don, how's the team doing? You just got through firing me." I turned around and peed all over his pants. So help me God, I did. Great Willis story, but a true one.
Well, Coach, I'm sure those of us that know you and know you well do not doubt that there's any fabrication or exaggeration. That all these stories actually did happen. We were riding in the van, you know, when you would talk to the toll people and when you would take care of us at restaurants, and you know, we know what we were well entertained besides being well coached. And
What used to say,
going through the toll booths, he was making.
Lord,
He made us laugh.
Well, we go ahead then.
And also, I remember when we went home for Christmas, you always wrote a story that you gave to all of us.
Yeah.
And it was like a Christmas story of, I guess, your childhood. I don't know, but it was very.
It's good that you brought that up, Dan, because Coach is going to tell us.
Books. Dan, I've written 40 stories, one every year, and I've published about 5 books. Now I've turned them over to a big time publisher in Indianapolis. I hope to get it out soon. It's entitled "What Did You Get from Christmas?"
There you go.
Every year
Perfect.
since y'all were in college, I haven't missed a year. I've done about every 4 years. I do a new book with a different color cover.
Good.
You know, but
Can we get a free one, the 3 of us?
we'll see. Pardon?
I'm going to buy mine, Dan. I'm going to
You're
buy
gonna
it.
buy
Make sure I
yours?
get an autograph.
Okay, all right.
Okay, but
I'll
listen,
shift over.
as Mike Currington said, it's been a fun hour. It goes by fast. I see
Oh, too fast. I can't
Richard
believe it.
Hermes' son. He's like, okay, his dad told him all these stories. Kevin Weldon's been on. You know, and I do want to bring up Grant Johnston for keeping all of us together as alums.
Yeah.
Grant does an amazing
You know, he's
job.
on that,
Yeah,
committee
he
now, on that big committee that Eddie Folk was on. That Travelers Committee is big, but it's important. We got a swimmer on that thing now almost every year, and that's good.
Ed Folk, another Philadelphia. You know, you had a nice connection in that Philly area, Coach.
Yeah, thank goodness for that. Sure did.
Yeah. So I'm going to give these young men a chance to kind of give us some closing thoughts. And, you know, I love having Becky on board, Rod Johnson. Hey, Dan, why don't you, you know, just leave us with a little thoughts, words of wisdom or anything you'd like to wrap it up with.
Words of wisdom. Everybody needs to learn to swim. I almost drowned when I was 7. I wouldn't take a bath for a month. And I finally went to the YMCA and took lessons. It's kind of like a Cullen Jones story. So learn to swim, be passionate, read the talent code. If you haven't read the talent code, read the talent code. It talks about how to be good and great at something.
Great advice, Dan. Thank you, man. And thanks for joining us. You will be a recurring guest, right? I know that we'd like you back someday.
Oh, if you say so, okay.
As will you, Brother Steve. Leave us with some gems.
you know, I think the piece that you might talk about when you talk to your kids is when you decide to go to college, it's such a big decision because you're joining a family that will be with you the rest of your life. Yeah. No matter what happens, thick or thin, fighting arguments, we didn't all get along all the time, but they're like family. And now, Sid, you know, what has it been? You know, it's been 14, 15 years since we graduated from state, and we're still.
Almost
Anyway,
2 decades.
That's great. Sid,
We're
so
like
good of you to do this. Thank you so much. I'm so proud of all you guys. So proud of you. Sid head of all this overwater swimming and internationally. He's done a great job. All you others have too. Family-wise, you've been so successful, as well as being an athlete. I love you so much. Thank you.
Love you, man.
Thank you, Coach, and Dan and Steve, and you know, you guys are special friends and a special time in our life. And Steve, you said it well that, you know, this time of development for young people, college age is so critical. But we had a family, and we got up early and we stayed together and we worked hard together. We played hard together, and we're still here 40 years later, loving each other up. So, Coach, we're very proud. As a matter of fact, Steve and Dan and I are going to make it to Charlottesville so we can swim in one of your Masters practices.
Love to have you.
We'll all come up. Yeah. We'll bring up Tom Bryan and a couple of these other guys. Dr. Jeff Michaelby, and
love to have you.
We'll have an alumni workout.
Fine. Looks good to me. Sounds
good. It'll be short.
Yeah.
Oh, very short.
Very short.
We're at about 2,000 of practice.
All right, gentlemen. Well, thank you all. I love you very much.
Thanks again. Appreciate it. Be well.
Good night.
Join us on the Swim Monkey.
Swim
Monkey.
TV. On the Monkey.